participate, I would like to run through some stuff, including the housing needs assessment and also this work the Chaffee Housing Trust is doing. So in the interest of time, I'm going to be very quick here. Sometimes I can speak very quickly, slow me down if you need to, but I'm going to try and cover a lot of material in a short amount of time. I would like to refer you to your packets and the information that's been provided for you. If you look at this page with the graph on top, that's self-explanatory, and below that there's a table showing the AMIs, or area median income, for Chaffee County, different household sizes, and also some definitions of what affordable or attainable or workforce housing means, because that's always in contention. If you flip to the next page, you get the summary of the Chaffee Housing Needs Assessment. This is an amazing document. We only get this once every 10 years if we're lucky, and it's expensive. So right now we have fresh data, 70-something pages of recommendations and actions that we can take. And if you have not read this document, please, I encourage you to look at it now while it's still extremely pertinent. And it's going to be our guiding document moving forward. The summary, well, you can touch on that yourself, but basically it's hard for folks to find a place to live. We need a supply of shovel-ready projects. And apartment construction right now appears to be the #1 priority, though I will present the case for affordable ownership as well. If you look at this income table that's partway down the page, it's very interesting. The first 3 columns, under $35,000, notice the population changes from 2000 to 2014. We had 50% of the population total under 35K back then, and it reduced down to 33% in 2014. So the question for this issue of workforce housing, well, where did all those workforce people go who were working in the low-wage, tourism-based jobs? And you look at the other end of the spectrum and the increases in the people who are in incomes above $50,000. So interesting stuff in this housing needs assessment. This one-pager is really brief, down and dirty, but for your reading now, at least it will help you understand where we're coming from. Looking at the needs, if you look at under housing needs #3, to keep pace with current demand and future growth, we need to produce somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 units per year, every year for 10 years. So that's quite a task, because if you know Chaffee County, there's been very little construction, especially of any multifamily, in the last decade or two. And so we're behind the ball, and the housing needs assessment very clearly spells out what we need to do to move forward. I'm sorry, that's down in the recommended goals. Now, if you look at the recommended actions, this is where the Housing Policy Advisory Committee, this group of people who came together voluntarily to try and advance the recommendations of this document, this is where we are focused. And 1 through 6 are really focused on land use and the things that can be done to, in terms of policy or trying to set it up so that affordable housing can happen. And what I'm going to focus on here are the last 2 or 3, specifically #7, when it talks about nonprofit organizations and the role that they play. And then, as we've already talked about with Jill's presentation, the role the Housing Authority can play. So what do these organizations look like, and why do we need these organizations? First off, what is the organization going to do? Well, projects. We need rentals, we need ownership opportunities. And so if you run through the list of what you're hoping a housing organization is going to do, it looks something like this.
We can't see it.
Well, we can move forward and get solved. If you flip ahead 2 pages to these 3 columns right here, this is what I'm going to talk about right now. So the housing needs assessment is very clear. I think it's pages 63 to 65. It talks about organizations that can be created or put to use to address affordable housing. The first one it talks about is the nonprofit organization. Well, let me back up here. What do the organizations need to do? Acquisition, so land and buildings. The nonprofit or the housing organizations could be a developer or a partner in the effort. They need to be able to own and operate housing projects, so that could be a rental project where they're managing it over time, or own the project and then sell it. They need to be able to enter into contracts, hire staff and subcontractors, and most importantly, they need to be able to assume debt or take out loans, so construction financing or long-term financing. So this is what we're looking for from our housing organization. So on the nonprofit side, the Community Housing Development Organization, or the CHODO, this term's being thrown around a lot, that's what it stands for, and it's a designation from the Division of Housing. The Chaffee Housing Trust has been awarded that status just recently, and we've received funding for 2017 to be the CHODO for Chaffee County. So what is a CHODO? It's a nonprofit. It's incorporated like any organization in the state of Colorado, and it has a board of directors that's very particular. 1/3 of that board of directors can and should be government, but no more than 1/3. 1/3 of that board of directors should be low-income representatives or low-income tenants themselves, and then the remaining third are people who are at large and don't fit either of those two previous definitions. Typically, those are lenders, developers, realtors, other people who are involved in housing, but aren't government and aren't low-income tenants. And of course, it needs to have paid staff. Just like any nonprofit, it can be funded via grants and donations, and as a nonprofit, it can provide a tax deduction for those donations. If a donation is land, then through the enterprise zone tax credit, we can provide a 12.5% tax credit for the fair market value of the land donated. So if you're a developer or a landowner and you want to donate $100,000 worth of property, you can get 12.5% tax credit for that donation on top of writing off the fair market value of that land against your earnings for that particular year. So these little mechanisms all add up to being able to pencil out a project and make it affordable. And then of course a nonprofit can receive funding for operations and administration from the Division of Housing. In the construction of any development, they can realize a developer fee, just like any developer does. And the nonprofit can also realize project revenues through rental projects, so monthly revenues from rents, and the nonprofit can receive that. The complement to the nonprofit CHODO is the Multi-Jurisdictional Housing Authority. Now Jill did a great job of talking about different housing authorities, different ways to structure them. The Housing Needs Assessment recommends the multi-jurisdictional model for Chaffee County for a number of reasons. It's considered a quasi-governmental organization. Jill's organization was actually part of the county, but a multi-jurisdictional is separate from the county. It's its own entity. It has a board of directors. Typically it has strong government representation, but it can have representation from anybody deemed appropriate. And that's one of the questions that would need to be answered. And it has paid staff. A multi-jurisdictional housing authority is established with an intergovernmental agreement. So whatever is in that agreement, and it can change over time, that determines what the housing authority can and can't do. So it's really up to the 3 municipalities in the county to determine what the housing authority would look like at its inception and then moving forward. Funding, it can go after government grants, federal, state, and local if they exist, but it cannot provide any tax benefit for donations. So that's a pretty important piece in that anything that comes to the housing authority, there's not that payoff for the developer or the donor. And it can go for a voter-approved ballot measure for local funding. It can also collect developer fees, realize project revenues, and an interesting caveat, any property that is serving 50% AMI and below does not need to pay property taxes. That might be a small incremental piece, but again, all these increments add up to penciling out a project. So you can see that the CHODO and the Housing Authority play complementary roles. The CHODO cannot act, or the Housing Authority cannot be a CHODO. It has to be a separate entity. Specifically because of the board makeups, they're very different. So currently the Chaffee Housing Trust is now the CHODO for Chaffee County, and we can talk in the future about what we need to do to complement that. So any questions so far about that material and what a CHODO is? Yes,
maybe you said this and I just missed it, but do you see in Chaffee County having both the CHODO and the NJHA? Are those two complementary organizations that each would bring benefits to projects like this so that you have both, for example, the Chodo, you can offer the tax deductions and the tax credits. With the multi-jurisdictional, you don't have that option, so if you is the idea to have both of those in place so that you can leverage and bring both those benefits? Is
That's where I'm going with this exactly. That the Chodo provides some benefits, the Housing Authority can provide others.
So I'm the straight person, is that what you're telling me?
Perfect job. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? All right. So I want to specifically talk about, I'm sorry.
Oh, I just had and I don't know if this is appropriate term, but regarding multi-jurisdictional, does it have to be just in a county? Because we've talked about Eagle County's housing some of Pitkin County's employees and Lake County's housing both Eagle and Summit County. So could there be a multi-jurisdictional that included more than one county?
I believe so, and Sarah Blanchard, you could probably answer that question better, but it's the IGA basically that states who's participating.
Yeah, there's flexibility in multiple counties.
Really huge breadth there. So specific to home ownership, there is this thing called the community land trust model. And the dry definition of that is it's a shared equity ownership program between homeowners and the community. Locally, the Chaffee Housing Trust is a community land trust. That's the model that we follow. And I'm going to run through some scenarios here to try and explain how this model works long term. I'm going to be quick and not get too deep into the numbers, though you'll see a lot of numbers, so do your best to hold on to your hats and follow along with me, and if something gets really out of whack, just raise your hand. So let's imagine a young couple comes to town, she's a graph guy, he's working as in a restaurant, they decide to get married, they want to start a family. What are their options in Chaffee County in terms of ownership and being able to anchor themselves in the community? Right now, $318,000, the average home price in Salida, $300,000 countywide, pretty much priced out of the market. But let's make some assumptions here for this scenario. So two-person household earning around $39,000 a year, that would put them at 80% AMI. They're looking at a 2-bedroom, 1.5 bath, about 900 square foot townhome and a row house or townhouse, and the market price for that's $190,000. Now I know the realtors in the room are thinking, well, what's he smoking? Because that's not something that exists here in Chaffee County. This is something that's going to be coming soon to the county that we hope to see, and I can't talk too much about the details right now, but we're looking forward to this being available in the near future. What this looks like, that $190,000 market price, if you look at the subsidies that the Chodo can bring to the table, including $10,000 from the state per unit, we can go after foundation dollars, local support. If someone wants to give money to bricks and mortar, 100% of their donation goes to the construction of a permanently affordable home. That's a very attractive offer to make to the community. And then that land value under that unit is let's say it's valued at $20,000, just a piece of land under the unit that's going to be affordable. That 12.5% tax credit can go back to lowering the price of that unit. So the Chaffee Housing Trust price for that unit is $170,000. Now here's where I run through some assumptions on some numbers on the graph that I'm about to show you. First of all, that the annual market rate home values can vary between -1% and 6%. We saw a number of years of 10% annual increase in home values in Salida, so I'm trying to be very conservative with my numbers here. Averaged out over 25 years, it's a 3% annual increase in home values in the graph I'm about to show you. And also, I made the assumption that interest rates are going to go up, so I put in 0.25% in 2019, another 0.25% in 2021, and then every 3 or 4 years, another 0.25% until we get to 2042, where interest rates would be, in my scenario, 5.75. Here's what that graph looks like in terms of the value of that home. Starting at 190 and then going up, just realizing a little bit of a dip. I'm predicting it right here, right now. 2029, there's going to be a recession, according to my graph. Plan accordingly. But I just wanted to show a potentially realistic situation for the value of a home in Chaffee County. So we're looking at $190,000 mortgage for the market rate home, 30 years, 4%, with $165 per month in taxes, insurance, and HOA fees. If we look at the maximum mortgage available to someone who is at 80% AMI, it graphs out like this. And I'm assuming a 2% annual increase in the AMI. That could change, and that's just a hopefully conservative prediction. But you can see that in the beginning, AMI is pretty close to that home price, and over time, that home is going to get more and more valuable or higher priced, and that families at 80% MI are more and more priced out of the market. So if the situation's bad now, it's only going to get more difficult just looking at natural market forces. So what can we do about it? Well, two things. We can put a deed restriction on that home and say that it is permanently restricted to families at 80% AMI and below. That's what the deed restriction does. It runs with the land, so even if it changes hands, that deed restriction stays with the land. And in the case of foreclosure, a deed restriction can go away. But with the Chaffee Housing Trust model, the Housing Trust owns the land underneath the home, and we have a land lease. It gets a little complicated, but long story short, we have first right of refusal. So if a family looks like they're headed to foreclosure, we can intervene, prevent foreclosure, and retain that affordability. The second thing that the Housing Trust does via the Community Land Trust model is this resale formula. So instead of giving the family 100% of appreciation when they go to sell it, we limit it to 25% of appreciation. And here's how that pencils out. The home at sale is worth $190,000. We're selling it for $170,000 in 2017. We got a market appraisal, or in this case, if it was a row house, the house next door is market rate. We know it sells for $190,000. There's our comparable. 2027, the family says, hey, we have 2 kids now, under the age of 10, we're in 2 bedrooms, 1.5 bath, we need to move to a bigger house. So they come to us and they say, we're ready to sell, and we have a list of ready buyers waiting for their turn at the home. The home appraises for $265,000. You look at the difference between the market rate appraisals, and you get a fair market appreciation of about $75,000. We apply our formula of 25% of appreciation. So there's the appreciation that the family realizes, about $19,000. So the resale price to the next family coming in, who looks just like that family when they bought it, is the $170,000 plus the appreciation paid to the first family. Throw in some transaction fees, and it's $193,000 in 2027. That the market appraised value of that home is $265,000. And now what we see is that the gap between the market and the CHT home is about $72,000. How does that translate onto the graph? Well, here it is. The Chaffee Housing Trust home was artificially kept low at a sale price right around 80% AMI. And so over 25 years, we hope that the price of the home will trend below 80% AMI, making it always affordable to that family who comes in next. And here's that gap. Look at the difference between when the home was first built to 25 years later. If the Chaffee Housing Trust wanted to buy the house next door that was at $190,000 when it first was built, we would have to put $72,000 into that home to bring the price down to below 80% AMI. So by doing it up front now, building these homes now, and locking them in with this formula, every unit that we create, that's one more unit that's permanently affordable in the county. Give us 10 or 20 years and we'll have these units dotted all over the county, permanently affordable. So this is how we make ownership affordable. And then just looking at the situation for that family and how it turns out for them, they realize the home appreciation of about $19,000. The mortgage principal payments that they were making, the equity that they have on the home, pencils out to about $36,000. And then because they're paying a mortgage, the interest that they're paying on their home can be deducted from their income. They realize a tax benefit for that. So that would be an additional $15,000, a total of about $70,000 that they walk away with when they sell their limited equity home. Take that $70,000, 20% down, they can buy a $350,000 home in the year 2027. So now we've taken a family who was priced out of the market and was struggling even with rent, and we put them in an ownership situation. They're stable, locked into the community. Their employers know they have reliable employees. It creates that community cohesion, that community character that we value so much. So this is fulfilling the values that we all aspire to for our community. And here's an interesting comparison. If they had been renters, paying $1,000 a month with 2% annual increase in their rent, they would have paid out $131,000 over those 10 years, and they'd have nothing to show for it. If you crunch all the numbers, include the HOA fees and the taxes and insurance, the difference in the financial position of that family is $178,000. So when we talk about building community, when we talk about trying to honor the character and make our workforce able to stay in our community, this is one of the tools that we should have at our disposal. Not everybody's a homeowner. Some people are renters by nature and they're not ready for home ownership. But the Chaffee Housing Trust can get them ready through homebuyer education, pre-approval, credit repair, all the things that need to happen to get people homebuyer ready. And so I like to say this is the half step up the ladder to the American dream. We get people into one of our homes and then they get out into the open market and someone comes in behind them. That's one way to address part of our affordable housing problem. And there are some of the benefits that I talked about. So an interesting model, it's very useful, is now being employed across the country, big cities and small. In Colorado, Colorado Springs and Boulder and Denver all have community land trusts that have been around for quite a while. Chaffee County is the first attempt at a rural community land trust. And I think there's great opportunity for us here. So any questions about this?
I got a question. So I guess maybe it's for the bankers. How does that factor into the banking industry if it's the property, the actual ground is being held by another entity?
Well, I don't know the answer relative to the secondary market, but that wouldn't fit in the secondary market, placing a loan, owning the home, and then getting a mortgage on it that goes into the secondary market without, I think, an investor understanding exactly what they're getting. I don't know whether you have a better observation than that, but locally, it's possible that financial institutions, if they were doing something in the community locally, might be able to do a little bit, but I don't know. It's a question that I have with all of these programs as it relates to placing those mortgages in the secondary market.
Yeah, so I'll just speak to that. There are limitations in the secondary market putting mortgages on those properties. A lot of it has to do with the way the restrictions. A lot of it has to do with the way the restrictions are written. And one of the key ones is, of course, that it is extinguished in the case of a foreclosure. But then it all, again, the way you craft these formulas and how much the home can appreciate in value, there are some limitations to that. But there is a secondary market for those types of mortgages. It's just not every lender does it the way a fee simple type of mortgage would work.
And the idea of it, which I heard here, I think absolutely secondary market, and I don't know about within the communities. But the idea of a land lease, you're going to have some structure for that land lease to be maintained literally in perpetuity while there's beyond just a short period of time. You'd have to tie a land lease absolutely to the life of the house. Something like that. That's a big question.
So I think it's been about 15 years since the house sold for $190,000. And we're trying to get close to that as a builder. And I would like to know how that's possible in this day and age in this community, because I feel we'd like to build some of those.
Great.
As a matter of fact, I am involved in this project, and yes, it is possible. Once we get town approval from Brandy and Joel and trustees and planning and zoning, which hopefully will happen within a month or so, we will be announcing and coming to market. But it will be a neighborhood concept. The density is key to offset the incredible cost of infrastructure. And it will be modular homes, 9-foot ceilings in the lower level. It is really going to be quite a development. So yes, it is. Reed is correct. That would be the target price for the 2-bedroom. And it might be a little bit lower for inside units. It would be row houses or whatever, townhouses. Inside units might be a little below that. The 2 outside units might be a little above. But yeah, that will happen.
Dan, at the 190,000 price point, what's the estimated square footage of the house?
900 square feet.
How many bedrooms and bath?
That's 2 bedrooms, 1.5 baths.
One thing I would like to make a point of is, with the conference we had in October, and I met Reed there, there's also a project down in Denver, I hate to use the word project, but where Lowry Air Force used to be in Buckley. They've had about 200 homes, from townhomes to single-family homes, on the ground since about 2007. And I had a conversation with the executive director in that organization, and this happened during the horrible economic downturn we had with all the repossessions and the foreclosures. And during that time with this particular model, they had 0 foreclosures within their 200 homes. And that is a very powerful dynamic that adds stability to the communities with the community land trust model that Reed is representing.
Nationally, CLT homes are 9 times less likely to go into foreclosure than market rate homes, and that was through the recession. So that stewardship of the local organization, the relationship with the homeowner, and that first right of refusal, the ability to intervene, are all key components of that. John, you have a question?
With Breckenridge, I would echo that. I think we've had 1 foreclosure since 2000. We've had 1 foreclosure since 2000, and it went through 2008, 9, and 10.
Great, if there's no more questions, we're going to move on to the rest of the panel here. So we've got a number of folks here. We're going to start with Wendell.
Thank you, Reed, for that commercial message of the Chaffee County Trust. And in all seriousness, this is not an either-or world. I think it's, both and all. So we appreciate that. And I especially want to call Reed out for his leadership and being a champion for this effort. I think he deserves it. So I'm going to talk about the workforce housing side of this, and very briefly about the Economic Development Corporation and its efforts. And just to clarify one point that Reed brought out as part of his presentation, we do have, I think, affordable and workforce housing as an approved project in the enterprise zone for Chaffee County. So we are able to issue that 25% tax credit for the donation of that land. Corey Katsimplis is our enterprise zone administrator. You can talk to him about how the tax credits work, but that is another tool in the toolkit, so to speak. I'm reminded of a couple of comments. One, about 3 years ago when Kim Renner, and on behalf of Habitat, led the effort, we convened a group of employers at the steam plant. I don't know if some of you were there, but I remember talking about this looming issue or problem about workforce housing, and I remember Rich Edgington making a comment that we can no longer solve the problem by just building onesies and twosies. If any of you were there that remember that, remember that comment, and how prophetic that was. Also, annually, I try and make it to Denver for the Colorado Business Outlook. The Lead School of Business at CU does an annual program where they kind of talk about the economy and what's happening. Last year when I went, I never will forget the comment, but it certainly has kind of given me charge to try and address this problem. There was a developer who was talking about the boom in Denver, not only with regard to the population, but the housing boom and how they were going to address that. And in opening his remarks, I remember him making the statement that homes are where jobs go to sleep at night. So I'm in the jobs business in terms of economic development, and we certainly want to do our part in making sure that workers have adequate housing in this community and that we remain a strong community. So just a quick overview from what I learned on Monday from the Outlook. The economy is strong in Colorado and going to remain strong. It will continue to grow. It's interesting that some of the sectors that they expect continued growth are health and wellness, construction, retail and tourism, finance, banking, and real estate, and wholesale trading, along with what they call the 3 T's, which represent 1/6 of the economic growth in the state, and that is transportation, telecommunications, and utilities. And in terms of utilities and telecommunications, it's the infrastructure and the need for broadband that are going to continue to remain an issue in the state. But the point is, those industries that are projected to grow are part of the key industries that make up Chaffee County. So we kind of mirror the state economy in terms of where that growth is. The other thing I took away from the presentation on Monday is that 90 to 95% of the growth in the state is occurring along the Front Range. As opposed to last year, there was very little mention of what's happening statewide, other than tourism and outdoor recreation, which continues to be strong, and of which this valley is a part of. And the takeaway for me is that we cannot necessarily look to or depend on the Front Range to solve our problem. The Economic Development Corporation Board is supporting some legislation that they're having me work with State Representative Wilson on that would provide tax incentives for employers to either subsidize or provide employee housing. So we're excited about that effort. But our strategy as a corporation is to work directly with employers. This project that Dan mentioned, we've worked with the 2 largest employers in the community, both the hospital and the prison. And so we want to continue to make sure that employers participate or contribute in some way to this effort. And so that's what you can look to us for. And then finally, I just wanted to call out the project that we have for affordable housing in Buena Vista, it's part of the county. And the reason I want to call it out is that it's a big deal for this county to land about approximately $1 million in tax credits. Al Blum is here representing Urban Inc., but we just need to acknowledge and celebrate that fact, and then we need to get on with building it. But that's an example of public-private partnerships, and I'm really pleased to see a number of developers in the room that hopefully will stick around a little bit this afternoon to kind of give us their thoughts on where we need to go next. And finally, with regard to that project, and this is the way I think smart communities help themselves. There's $8 million in construction and monies that are going to be available. And so any of these local developers and contractors need to talk with Al or see myself or Corey to get on the list, because we're going to need some help in making sure that project gets built in a timely way. So with that, those are my remarks. I'm going to be around this afternoon. I hope you do stick around as well. I really want to welcome the people from the surrounding counties. It's a pleasure to have you here and participate with us. And I'm going to hand it off to what I call as the cool group. They nickname themselves the First 50. So Kimberly's going to talk about where that term came from and what they're about. Thank you.
We're going to switch the order of the speakers just a little bit to accommodate 2 people that have got some multiple things they're juggling, need to leave early. So I'll introduce more about the First 50 working group in a minute. But first, Andrea Karlstrom is going to speak. She's the director of Chaffee County Public Health. She works on 2 working groups, the Communication Education Working Group, and also on First 50. And then you'll hear from another person who's with Sage Generation, and that's Jerry, and she will be talking just afterward, and then I'll come back up.
So my first promise to you is that I will not cloud your heads with technical math, and thanks, Reed, that was quite the brain tease there. And secondly, I just want to say, extend my forgiveness. So like many of us in the room, I'm wearing multiple hats today, and I need to run as soon as I give you a little bit of information regarding our community health assessment, because I also lead the Chaffee County Health Coalition, and so I need to go run and do that, and then I'll be back this afternoon. So we recently finished our community health assessment in 2016 that, as I said before, will pave the way for our 2017 through 2021 community health improvement plan. And while many of us don't naturally think of lack of affordable housing as a health issue, our community did, and it rose to the top of one of our health priorities. And so I had a lot more information to share, but in the spirit of conserving time, I just want to share with you some of the comments that our community members shared with us regarding the importance of affordable housing in our community. And some of these may be just a repeat of what was previously said today. So it was no surprise, right? But I feel like this is a fundamental quote that drove our health assessment and in many ways shapes why we're here today. So one comment we received was, having a place to live adds to the health of the community. Pretty fundamental, right? However, it's taken us, sounds like, many years to wrap our heads around what this actually means for our community members. The cost of living is expensive, and when some people are working 2 to 3 jobs to live here, it's hard for them to take time to be healthy. It's important to recognize, right? I believe, Becky, you had alluded to that earlier. If we don't have a safe, warm, inviting, conducive place to live, how can we take care of ourselves? How can we take care of providing healthy food on the table? Or how can we take part in active living activities that our community provides to us? However, there are many people in our community that don't have the time or the resources to partake in those. One comment, it's hard to recruit people to live here. Housing is too much and wages are too low. And I know that Reed tapped on this, but one statistic that our health assessment provided us was really quite astounding, and it didn't resonate with me whatsoever. And so as a public health department, as we're trying to be good stewards of community health, this statistic was just shocking to me. So the median home value in Chaffee County is 11% higher than the state of Colorado, yet the median income is 22% lower than Colorado median. That seems a little imbalanced to me. In addition to the lack of affordable housing, our community health assessment also indicated that there's a significant need for affordable senior housing in our county. And so I'm going to turn that over to Jerry. I'm also on the board of directors of Sage Generation, and I'm really excited about the momentum that's building regarding senior services and supports in our county. In our upcoming improvement plan, senior services and supports is one of top 3 priorities that we'll be tasking our community members and partners to really look at to strengthen what is a Colorado-wide phenomenon that's occurring in which our population is increasingly becoming senior. So thank you for your time. I'm sorry I need to dash out, but I just really appreciate all of the work that all of you are doing, whether you're a community partner, elected official, or just a community member that's passionate and willing to roll up your sleeves to make a difference in our community. Thank you.
Morning. My name is Jerry Thomas, and I am here today wearing the hat or representing Sage Generation. About a year ago, Marilyn Bolden, I think quite a few folks know her, and I conspired to start a nonprofit that would really start to look at the need for affordable senior housing, but particularly the need for assisted living in Chaffee County. So folks are probably familiar with the fact that we don't actually have an assisted living facility in our community. We have Columbine Manor, which is a skilled nursing facility. I'm a novice at the senior thing, but basically a higher level of care. Most folks don't end up needing skilled nursing facilities. We don't have assisted living in the community currently. We've had some in the past. So in the process of starting Sage Generation, we're about a year old. We have 3 projects going on and 2 that are relevant, I think, to the work that's going on with affordable housing is that we've really been trying to look at innovative ways to support seniors to thrive in their living situation of choice. So we have two projects, one that we just launched recently that we took from both Vermont and several projects in California, and now one is being launched in Denver, and that's basically a home share program. So what that project does is it takes seniors who have their own living situation, either they own or they rent, and they have an extra room in their house. And they home share with somebody who, for a reduced rent, provides some services in exchange. What that does is it allows a senior to age in place longer, oftentimes avoiding the need for assisted living at all, and it allows a would-be renter to rent at a reduced rate in exchange for doing some non-certified nursing things. So no services that would really require a certified nursing assistant or medically based, but things like screwing in light bulbs, taking you to the grocery, going on errands, helping around the house, and or just being a companion in the home, just somebody, an extra set of eyes and ears. That project we launched actually this last month, and I would have to say that it speaks to the spirit of Chaffee County and how much interest we've had already in people being able to be partnered up with each other. So that's one project that we have going on. Certainly not going to address the need for affordable housing for everybody, but it could take the pressure off. And I put the word out. We have a really good pipeline to seniors in the community right now, but we don't have as good a pipeline to potential renters. So if you're an employer and you have an employee who you think something like this might be a good fit with, we have information on the back room, the back table. The second thing that we have going on is that we are really trying to look at an affordable assisted living facility that takes Medicaid in the community. And I think to Andrea's point, and somebody spoke about it earlier, many organizations are starting to see that health and housing are connected. And the Colorado Health Foundation actually is in conversation with us about a grant to address the assisted living need here in this community. So we will keep you posted on that component, and certainly Wendell and Reed and a lot of other folks have been pivotal in helping us get this out of the gate. But so I think I was just asked mostly to present on sort of, we have a small piece of this interest. We have more than double, or almost double the state rate of 65 and over population in Chaffee County, 23% compared to 12.7% statewide. And that's what we need to get up to 30% in the next few years. So, okay. Questions, thoughts? I'm going to pass it on to Kimberly. Thank you.
I'm my own IT person, so I'm going to put my presentation up. So I am really thrilled and excited to be speaking on behalf of the First 50 working group. I am fairly new to the community, and I have learned a lot from the professionals that are in this group and working really hard on services and housing at the same time and the interplay of those things. And so what I'm representing is the work that's come out of the HPAC working group that is looking at something that we first started to talk about as supportive housing. And I'm really grateful to John for teeing up these ideas around community and housing and how that plays into things like health and wellness and families. I'm also talking about childcare and the impact of that. So our working group first started talking about what is supportive housing and what models have happened in other communities. And then we started talking about what's really reasonable for our community and how can we do actionable things with what's existing right now instead of looking only long term. And so in those supportive housing discussions, we started to look at who are the people that are at risk and the families and children that are at risk in our communities, and how does housing play into them being able to access services. And so what we realized is that some of these other models that are happening in other places where there's a supportive housing unit that has services in-house, that is a long-term goal, and it would be great if we could do that here, but we actually think that it might be more viable to do what's called mobile advocacy, and to take the services into the home where people are living. And so in thinking about that, we thought through, how can we communicate that a lot of the folks that we're trying to provide services to are 50% or lower AMI. And so we wanted to bring the focus to that group of people in our community, because there are a lot of them. So we also are seeing this bent toward flexible funding that's coming from funders to granted organizations. And so the idea that we would do mobile advocacy and flexible funding for services in the home actually changes how we look at housing and why we're looking at it in certain ways. And we are looking at research-based ways to be proactive. We look at things through protective factors for families to protect them from risks that cause things like neglect or child abuse or issues in the home that cause crisis. So we are using research to inform what we're doing. And I would say that anyone who knows about this communities trying to be trauma-informed communities are communities that understand that every family goes through crisis or times of need. And so when we do, how do we set into place services that can be accessed for those people that go through times like that without having them have to leave the community in order to get those services because they have no stable place to live and access them. You all have probably seen this chart. It was brought to the HPAC from Reed, but we just wanted to highlight that this is a large portion. It's kind of hard to see, I guess, up there on the screen, but 50% AMI and below families in our county are actually, there are a lot of them. So AMI for real in our county, I think was mentioned $15 an hour. In other counties is what sort of the base pay was. And what we're looking at here in Chaffee County is that a lot of people are actually making $10 an hour. And what that means for an individual is that they're probably at about 50% AMI. This assumption here is basically a 40-hour work week and 52 weeks a year. So I'm making those assumptions. There are no breaks or vacation in this. I'm just getting some numbers of hourly wages for people in our county and what that actually looks like on the AMI scale. If you're a single parent and you have one child and you're making $10 an hour, you're under 40% AMI. And so the third item I have on there is two parents. One parent's working and one's not, and they have a child, and that's under 40% AMI. And the difference here that I want to point out is childcare. If you have a parent who can offer childcare, you actually are in better shape financially than the second bullet point, the single parent. We're seeing a lot of single parents with a child or more than one child who are working at least one job or more, and they're homeless. And so I'll talk for a minute about anecdotally what we've noticed about the homeless perception here in Chaffee County. It's not the same as what people think is actually homelessness here in Chaffee County. So the fourth item that I put on here is the single parent who's working at around minimum wage, which I know is going to go up because of the ballot initiative that passed. But if someone is, they have a child, they don't have child care, and they're trying to work, this 30% AMI is actually where it's not unreasonable to see that in our community. And these are people that are trying to find work and housing and child care, but the interplay of those three things is real tricky. So we want to just highlight that this group that we're looking at, they are workforce. So in addition to workforce, and they are people that have needs in mental health, they might have needs for substance abuse, they might have child care needs. So there's just different levels of services that are coming together, and we're trying to collaborate and see what can we do and what innovative solutions can we come up with that are custom to our county and what we actually have available. So these are our working group goals right now. We've been able to meet once formally since before this summit and sort of hammer out what a few of our goals are, but This afternoon, we're going to be working together to look at these goals again, see if they're the right goals for short-term, mid-term, and long-term goals for this working group, and reevaluate what these goals are actually going to achieve, especially based on the information we're learning here and the experts that are here. We're hoping to garner your information from what you've learned and the projects you've been involved with to see how we can further some of these goals. We do think there are some innovative things going on, and my approach was going to tee up the sort of home share that Sage Generation is doing. That's a really great project, and when they announced it to the community, there were a lot of people there that wanted to share their home and were asking, who can I share my home with? And they do interview people and see if it's a good match, and so I think being innovative is a really great way to go about this. So I'll just mention quickly that some of the anecdotes I got from different people in the working group about homelessness, that's current homelessness in Chaffee County. These are people who, one of the anecdotes is two couples. So one person on our team said that in the last 2 weeks, they had 6 families they were working with that were homeless. 2 of those families were couples trying to find a place to rent and currently living in someone's living room. 2 are single mothers with children under the age of 2. And any of you that deal with any child care realize that in our county, if you have a child that's 2 or under, there's very, very limited child care. And right now there's no child care for someone who might want to use CCAP money or even have money to pay for it. There just aren't providers. One of those 6 families is a middle-aged woman who's living in a culvert, and one person is an older man who lost a job and is living in a car. We also have individuals who need emergency and temporary housing because they've come out of a situation or been in a crisis situation, and they're paying $200 to $300 a week, which comes out to about $850 to $1,300 a month. So we don't have, we're working on it and we're collaborating, and the different organizations that are involved in this working group are working with businesses and trying to find some emergency and temporary housing. There is a richness when people do get to come out of situations that have been crisis situations and stay in the community. They really tend to want to give back and be productive and really move forward those things in the future too. So I think there's a lot of value to an enrichment to be found there. We have some other innovative solutions that have actually come up. We do have one vacation rental owner who has partnered with one of our organizations to do a customized agreement for short-term rental. And I really appreciate your comments about what's happening in Summit County, because that model is pretty incredible with what they're doing with vacation rentals. And so we hope to find ways to partner and make that more of a viable solution for at least temporary housing. And so that is an innovative thing that's moving forward. And I do know of a home, it's a private citizen in Chaffee County, and she offers a home for people who had substance abuse issues and want to stay sober. And they live together, and there's some structure around that. So we've got a few things that are happening, and we're really excited about it, and I think we can build on that with collaboration, with open discussion, and sort of talking through what the needs are. And so I would invite you to our working group after this session or after lunch, and we'd really love to have your input. So I will pass it off to Lawton Eddy.
My notes right here. I'm Lawton, and I'm co-chair with Paige in the Public-Private Partnerships Workforce. So I'm going to speak to the goals that we're attempting to set and reach, and the strategies we want to use to get there. But before I could really wrap my brain around public-private partnerships and what they really mean, I needed a quick lesson in economics and free market, how the free market works. And the thing I learned is that the free market is really, really good at one thing, and that is following the money. So that results in two outcomes, and one of those outcomes is where we are now, a housing crisis, which is also called a market failure. It's a failure of the free market to produce a variety of housing in a variety of price ranges, because those in the housing industry follow the money. And number two, savvy buyers and investors follow the money. They find the good deals and snatch them up. So our first-time and lower-income home buyers lose out every time to an investor with cash in hand. So this makes our goals very clear. We must provide more housing in a variety of price ranges, and we must protect access to that housing for our renters and buyers in the lower price ranges by funding and utilizing an entity such as a housing trust and a housing authority. And we've heard a lot to support the value and necessity of that this morning. So we can't expect the free market to solve a problem it created. That's wishful thinking. It's not a solution. We move out of an old paradigm, get open-minded, work together, government entities with builders and developers to meet these goals. And I'm so pleased that John Warner shared such a great list of things they've used, and very successfully so, in Breckenridge. So examples, we've heard many of them. It's trade, it's exchange. We're going to reduce a water tap here, give some city land for a reduced price. We're going to waive a permit fee. We're going to subsidize the developers in some way. We're going to increase density. We're going to create incentives that inspire, motivate, and bring towards this project, this type of project, builders and developers willing to work within that model. Urban Inc. is an exceptional example of the city of Buena Vista working with an entity to create such a project. So we have great examples. We don't have to create, build the wheel, but we do need to start, and our workforce is tasking ourselves with inviting builders and developers to sit down at a table with us. We're going to share the housing, the findings of the housing study with them and say, this is the types of housing we need, this is the numbers of these types of housing we need. We need apartments, we need multifamily dwellings, we need homes in these price points. And then we're going to ask them for their input, and we're going to listen. And we want to know specifically what changes, exchanges, public-private partnerships might incentivize them to build in a wider range of price points and styles. And these could include changes in policy, codes, zoning, infrastructure requirements, fees, partnerships and exchanges such as reduced land costs, tax incentives, a housing authority or a housing trust to take on the role of identifying qualified renters and implementing deed restrictions instead of expecting the builders to do this. This is not what they do. And so next we will present these findings and recommendations to planning and zoning, city council and town trustees. What's needed, there are councils that are committed to supporting affordable housing and prioritizing that. And that is something that our education and outreach committee is going to work real hard at accomplishing. And then finally, we're going to ask these entities to commit to the process. Listen to the information we've gathered and tell us, we're ready, we're going to make this happen, and we want all of you to join us. So I'm going to be at a table facilitating this conversation, so please bring your great ideas and help me with a document to present. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Paige, and I am also co-chair with Lawton, or we are co-chairs on these two committees. I'm going to talk about education and outreach. The goals we have for education and outreach are to bring awareness to our communities and our elected officials about the lack of affordable housing. I participated on the school bond issue in Salida, successfully passed 2 BEST grant issues, and I was more involved in the high school one. But what they did is they got a grassroots effort. They went out there, they talked to everybody. And we are going to use four tools to do that so that we can reach out to everyone in our community. And Brandy shared with us how Buena Vista did that for quite a while to get everyone using the same vocabulary. So when it came time to get a big project like the Urban Ink project, everybody knew what was going on, and that made it easier for everyone to work together. So the things that we need to communicate, Wendell talked about how the lack of affordable housing affects our business. A lot of us have talked about how it affects our citizens, our schools, our sense of community. And the other thing that we need to educate is what programs exist that may help our community improve the housing situation. What we don't want to be is be in Jill's situation where the day after the election you're wondering what happened, what did we do wrong, who didn't we talk to, what levers did we not push. So we're going to try and hit all those levers using grassroots so that everyone's on the same page. So we're going to use different prongs to reach multiple audiences. I am going to put out a cry for help. I'm very Slida-centric. I would love someone to come join me who lives in the north end of the county, who has connections. And I would love it if you came and joined me because we need your help. So here are the four prongs. First one is we're going to be working with the Mountain Mail down the southern end of the county, and I'd love to have a counterpart. Jan Wondra has been our partner already, and she has written several articles about the status of affordable housing in our community. One thing that she's going to start soon is the faces of affordable housing. We're not quite sure what we're going to call it. One thing we've kicked around is it's me. Who's affected by affordable housing? It's me. If you shop in our county, if you want to eat at a restaurant and have a burger under $25, if you have a kid who wants to live in the community, if you like to have a library with people who work there, if you have kids who go to school, pretty much everyone is affected. If you're going to need a nurse at some point in your life, if you have an elderly parent. So we want to show that it's not just our lower income people who are struggling, it's everybody in our community who makes their living in our community. So Jan is our partner on that front. We have a social media page that's just begun. If you pull out your phone and you like housing, or now I can't remember the name of our acronym, the HPAC, Housing Policy Advisory Committee. Right now that's a live site, you can like it. I'm the person who puts things out there. Some things I've put out there already are links to the great series from Summit County that John referenced about the 13-part series in newspaper. I've got a link to that. I have a link to Sage Generation's presentation to share their home share program. I have a link to the assessment. My goal for that is to hit that 3 or 4 times a week. So if you're following it, you will get some constant reminders so that it stays on top of your mind and you have data that you can use to share with your friends and neighbors so that you can have facts at your fingertips. The third tool is one I'm going to ask for help in my work group today. I have never made a website until this month, and I'm going to get some feedback on it today. It's going to have all the things that are on the Facebook friend group, but they're all going to be one place. So if someone has time to want to dig down, I have links to some case studies. I have links to the Gunnison Valley, their multi-jurisdictional housing authority. I have information about what programs exist in our county right now. So it's kind of where you can go when you want to dig deep and learn more about what's happening in our community. And the last one, we're going to start after the first of the year. This was used very successfully for those the best grant bond issues I discussed earlier. We had trusted community members go to talk to everybody who would let them. They showed up at Rotary, they'd show up at City Council, they'd show up at the Small Business Alliance. They show up wherever people are, and they explain why affordable housing is important. So the end goal of all these is eventually there's going to be a call to action. There's going to be an IGA that you want your government to vote for. There's going to be a mill levy. There's going to be a sales tax increase. There's going to be something that someone has to vote on to fund affordable housing in our county. So we need to reach out to the people who are going to vote in the general election, and we also need to reach out to all of our elected officials who are going to vote to make the framework that will make all this go forward. So I'm going to be sitting over there because I have my laptop with my website on it. So if you want to join me, especially if you're from BV, I'd love to have you join me after lunch. Thank you.
I want to say thank you to our panelists, not only for speaking here today, but these are folks who have been meeting consistently for the last several months, trying to move forward and breaking up into small groups and being very motivated to solve our own problems. So thank you to all of them. At this point, we'd like to give you guys a break. We have lunch ready for you. On the left side are veggie, and then everything else is labeled. We're going to take 15 or 20 minutes just to get some food in us, and there's more iced tea and water, of course. And then around 12:20, we're going to have our guest speaker, Joe Rowan, come give us a big picture about affordable housing. So thank you for your time, and we'll be back in 15 or 20 minutes.
I'm trying to find a pause.